Usually I have somebody help me carry these in, so I'm a little bit out of breath. All right, today we're gonna be relayering an old canvas that I think it's really boring, actually. I've had this inventory for a minute. Somebody would probably buy it the way it is, but I'm not in love with it. So if I'm not in love with it, I'm just gonna keep working on it until I am in love with it. Because what I've learned is people can feel the energy that I put towards my work. So like if I feel a certain way about a piece of my work, the prospect or buyer is gonna pick up on that and they're gonna feel that energy from me. So it definitely helps if I love it. That's not always the case. I mean, I've definitely had situations where people have bought the painting that was my least favorite, so you never know. Everybody's got different taste, so remember that. But I also try not to make art based on what I think people are gonna buy, because I've done that in the past and it's not a winning strategy, put it that way. It takes away from the process. Anytime you think about money while you're painting, it destroys the creative process. There's no release in it. It's something to avoid, at least for me. I mean, if it works for you, that's one thing, but I'm just basically explaining things that work for me and what hasn't worked for me. All right, so first things first, I don't really feel like changing the whole table out. So basically we're just relayering it and make sure there's no holes in it or anything so the resin doesn't leak through and go all over the table. I use wooden blocks to create supports underneath the painting. I do one on each corner. I also try to make sure that these are sanded down and the same thickness, because you want this to be level. Okay. And after you've got the four corners popped up, you definitely want to get the middle as well. The reason this is so important is because a painting like this is heavy, so if it stays on those standoffs on the edges for more than a few days, it will start to bow in, and you want to avoid that. So definitely prop up the middle as well. All right, so usually what I will do after I get the canvas on the table and you know, I've got all that leveled and everything, what I'll go ahead and do is figure out what color palette I want to work with, and I will get all of the cups and stir sticks and other mediums set up before I mix resin, because once you mix the resin, you're on a timer. You have to get it done in a certain time. So I prefer to prep beforehand and not stress on the color palette, which sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. So I've got a few cups set up. I've got my stir sticks. Now I'm gonna go through and find what buckets I wanna use. A lot of times I save these buckets and reuse them, or I cut the resin out of the bottom and use those for sculptures. So I'm actually kind of picky about which ones I save and which ones I don't. But really, you know, whichever buckets you use are fine. It doesn't really matter, but I like to have a few to choose from. So I use a whole lot of different brands of pigments, different kinds of pigments. Sometimes I'll try something and then never use it again. There's certain brands that I use over and over and over again, but you know, I'll probably use like 5 or 6 different lines of pigments in one painting just because I can. So I've got most of my colors picked out now. Well, I've got a bunch of different things picked out. Yeah, I'm gonna be using, you know, basically house paints, latex paints, thicker paints like these heavy body acrylics. I like Golden brand. They make really good stuff. Got like a really thick concentration of pigment in them, which works well with resin. A little bit goes a long way. You don't have to add too much. You know, if you start using cheaper paints, the trick is to add more paint into it. But anyway, basically just try different things and see what works. Again, we're gonna go with a 10 quart. Again, this is a 1-to-1 resin and hardener ratio. There are a lot of different epoxies I've used over the years, and you know, I like a bunch of different types of epoxy for different reasons. They all have different viscosities, different working times. Yeah, some of them flood out more than others, and you know, like if I want to create more dimension in a piece between layers, I like to work with a thicker product That way it creates more space between layers. So like when you look from side to side at the art, it literally will shift on you. Where if you use a resin that has a lot of flood and it spreads out really fast, it's hard to get that same effect. What I like to do, I like to add a little extra hardener for good luck. If you add too much of it, it'll turn your resin yellow and it'll get hot and smolder and lump up and get all weird, which sometimes it creates really cool effects like that. If you do the opposite and don't add enough hardener, then your painting's gonna get sticky and you're gonna be pretty pissed off when it comes time to pick it up off the table. I mean, like 99% of the painting might be dry, and you might be ready to throw it on the wall. Then you'll notice like one place on it where it'll start dripping, or dust and hair and everything else gets stuck to it. So try to avoid that from happening if you can. And again, I try to reuse every product that I have as much as I possibly can. Supplies end up becoming very expensive. Keep the paddle stirrer down in the resin as far as you can, because if you are still stirring it and the paddle comes up, it will catch air and rip a bunch of bubbles into it, and you don't want that. So keep it down in it. This week, we've been focusing a lot more on marketing and getting the website set up, getting prepared for events, things like this. Also, getting the email marketing stuff all set up. We've got a new CRM platform that we're learning how to use it as well. And so that's taken a lot of the team's time and energy this week. So in other words, I haven't done any painting this week. So I actually am really excited to be in the studio finally. Typically, I'll paint at least 4 days a week, and that's a good healthy dose of creation. It keeps me sane, keeps me grounded. I will say, like, some of my best work comes out when I haven't painted in a while. Not necessarily saying that'll happen today, but it might not. So I'm just pre-mixing a few of these colors. You know what? I'm forgetting a crucial step though, and that is a mask. You should always use a respirator. This stuff has some twinkle to it, and I really like twinkle. Yeah, look at that. I don't know if you can really tell that it has iridescence from the camera, but I don't know, maybe it'll look good, maybe it won't. We'll try it. But that's a new paint that I've never used before. These are actually on sale at like Hobby Lobby, I think. One of my favorite things to do when I'm shopping for paint is I will go to like a Lowe's or a Home Depot, and there's this rack next to the paint department, always of like gallons of paint that people have ordered and then they didn't actually buy it. They just left it there. They abandoned it for whatever reason. And typically the managers will like drop the price down to like, 10% of the original price, especially if you buy everything on the rack. So that's what I'll do, is I'll go in and I will buy every single can of paint that people mixed up and just left. And I'll just use that stuff for like base coats even. I mean, some of them are actually probably pretty ugly as far as colors go, but still, paint's paint. That's actually not true. Paint's paint. It's not true. Let's slap some of this on here. I just really don't like this other painting, so let's just cover it up real quick. So this is a new color that I've never used as far as pigments go, and it's called dark brown. I didn't even know they made a dark brown. I know it sounds boring, but I'm really excited about it. It's probably going to be a really pretty pigment, and it is. All right, so when I'm relayering a painting, I always have one part that I still want to keep. And I still want it to have dimension. And the way that's achieved is by leaving some translucent parts on the top coats. So like, don't cover the whole thing up. Save your favorite parts. And what I do is I take clear and I will cut it back. In this part, I'll probably save all of that edge. This is just finger painting. And there's nothing intimidating about finger painting, you know? There's like no right or wrong. You just play with your hands, you're just playing with paint, right? So that's all it is. I encourage people to try it because it is one of the most fun forms of painting that I have found. Me personally, I don't like painting with a brush. I haven't spent a lot of time doing brush work, that's probably why. I do plan on getting better at it. We'll do some videos where you'll see some of my brush work and you'll understand. You'll understand where I'm coming from. I've also never used before, but it looks like just green glitter, basically what it is. So testing it out, seeing what happens. But also, I kind of want to mix some other stuff in with it. Let's mix this other blue in with it. It's like a ghost blue pigment, so that's like a funky color. I don't like it as much on the canvas. Probably take a little spray paint to it. Yeah, it's way more subtle that way. Looks good. Just a little bit more clear down here, and then I'm going to mix up some more paint. You always want to get your edges really good, and I like to try to get the edges first before I get to the end because I'll forget to do it. If I wait till the end, sometimes, you know, I'm forgetful. So yeah, you definitely want to finish the edges. It's important. It's very, very important, even when it's a piece that already has resin on it. So we might have enough resin to finish the painting already, but actually I'm gonna do this one a little different than usual. We'll get a few different colors. Metallic dark metal. Let's see what this looks like. Yeah, I like that color in here. I'm on the battlefield. This is cold in the... I'm on the battlefield. This is cold in the... I'm on the battlefield. I kind of want to add a different color in here. And then another part of me says just keep it simple, but sometimes I'm not very good at that. Again, 91% alcohol is one of your best friends when you're working with resin because you're going to get resin on you and on your things. So make sure you have some, make your life easier. It's amazing, like I didn't learn that I was supposed to use alcohol or acetone or any of that stuff to get resin off for like 6 or 7 years after I started playing with it. So I would just walk around sticky all the time. It's kind of ridiculous actually. I ruined so many houses that I lived in. My landlords, I would have hated to be one of my landlords. I would be so pissed off. Anyway, hopefully karma doesn't come back to me on that one. It's not like I did it on purpose. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna run this thing just a little bit. Yeah, if you watched the last tutorial we made, the piece turned out really good. I don't think we're gonna relayer it. Here's how it turned out. If you wanna see how we made this one and how the process went down, be sure to watch this video somewhere in here, I don't know. So I'm reluctant to do much more to this, but I'm going to anyway. I really like that like dark metal, dark metallic, whatever it is. This stuff looks really good. All right, so we're gonna cut it back with a little more of this pigment, the really twinkly, sparkly, thick-grained pigment. This is one of my favorites. Gonna add that stuff in, It's just got so much glitz to it. Lots of glitz. All right, it's getting really close. Getting very, very close to being finished. Also, you see me like dipping my hand in the bucket and scraping it. This is not the bucket that I mixed the resin in. If you ever do that with the bucket that you actually mixed up, it's gonna be bad, so don't do that. Basically, I pour that bucket into a different bucket. So once you do that, you can scoop it out by hand, but don't do it the other way around. The result will be lots of hot spots and your painting will be sticky and you will be very unhappy with that. So don't do that. I don't want you to be unhappy. And we should be good. I'm gonna hit it with bubbles or hit it with the torch one more time. All right. If I want it to run in a specific spot, I will heat it up in that one spot. So when I get to this point with a painting, a lot of times I'm starting to get frustrated, starting to feel like I want to keep going. A lot of times that means I need to stop and just let the painting rest because you don't want to overwork it. It's very, very easy to overwork resin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to torch it and let it set until the next studio session. Like I said, a lot of these paintings get a lot of different layers. They're not all just done in one sitting. So anyway, okay, so now when you're done messing around with it, the last step, one of the most important steps, is to put it up on standoffs. The reason is when you go back, take the canvas off the table, that resin will have solidified around all of these standoffs and you're gonna end up sanding for a lot longer than you anticipated. And we'll make a video about sanding, how to sand these correctly when you're finished, because it's very important. All right, so pull this thing off. It's definitely got some weight to it at this point. Let me check it out from this side. It's a big piece. I think I'm probably gonna like it. Well, it does look good this way, but I'm sure it's gonna look better this way. Yeah. So yeah, if you'll look at the back of the canvas, if you'll come over here, one of the next steps is going to be to sand all of these drips off the back. And because you don't want to scratch the wall when you install it, but there's a whole bunch of tricks when it comes to, or technique rather, when you're sanding these things too, because you want to leave a little bit of resin on the back so it doesn't delam and come off of the canvas, start to peel up or any of that. So basically you just want to leave just enough on so that it wraps really hard around the canvas and stays strong. So, and then after you're done with that, then you install hardware, like whether it's going to be wired. I like to use D-rings on a painting like this, especially if it's going to be hung in this direction. So we'll show you how we do that next. Take a look at your table. You're going to have a lot of stuff spilled off the edges. This is some of my favorite stuff. Like some of my favorite pieces are made out of this stuff that's on the table. So a lot of people will just throw this stuff away. Well, as you can see, you can just peel it up off of the Visqueen. Peel your standoffs back up. And really, a lot of people think this is just garbage, but you can make some really cool stuff out of this. I'll tell you this, it's definitely not gonna break down in a landfill if you throw it in the trash. So I would insist you try to repurpose it in some way. And we're gonna make a separate video teaching you how I repurpose it for my art. I make sculpture out of this stuff, and I have containers and containers and containers of this stuff, like huge Tupperware bins that is just full of this spill off, basically. And again, it's some of my favorite stuff. It really is. Like if you look at this small piece right here, this is a very small example of what we do with this stuff. And the trick is to recoat it like multiple times after you have made different things out of it, because it's not very strong if it's just single layer, but if you go back and recoat it and recoat it and recoat it, it will eventually turn rock solid. But it gets really heavy. Also, it gets very expensive because resin's not cheap, but you can make some really cool stuff out of it. So